Today, I was supposed to be traveling from Copenhagen to Hamburg on one of Denmark's brand new Talgo 230 trains. Instead, the Talgo disappeared, and what follows is a railway odyssey involving 4 train changes, 2 countries, a regional Danish consist, a classic DSB IC3, a Deutsche Bahn Class 445, and even Hamburg's S-Bahn. What happened to the Talgo? And how did a simple trip turn into this? Come along! Hi and welcome to Copenhagen Central Station, Denmark's busiest railway station and the gateway to both domestic and international rail services. Opened in its current form in 1911 with these beautiful wooden arches throughout the station and the very distinctive mosaics on the floor. It handles tens of thousands of passengers every day and serves as the starting point for journeys across Denmark and beyond. And now, while walking around, my heart almost stops when I receive this email from Deutsche Bahn. While I continue my walk through the station and DSB's first-class lounge, let me tell you the whole story. My train to Hamburg is cancelled. This is particular bad news because I have a Flixtrain connection to Berlin later in the day, and missing Hamburg could mean missing the rest of my journey altogether. Trying to find information, I discovered that DSB has arranged a replacement train as far as Tinglev, followed by a replacement bus service into Germany. Frankly, that sounds like a terrible idea, but I really need to get to Hamburg somehow. As you'll see later, I'll eventually manage to complete the entire journey by train, but getting there turns into quite the railway odyssey. One that you'll be joining me on today. But well, enough worrying. It's time to leave the lounge and head to the platform to see what DSB has prepared for us. And this is what shows up. Instead of one of DSB's Talgo 230 train sets, a regional push-pull consist rolls into the platform, with a DSB Siemens Vectron locomotive at the opposite end of the train. Oh boy, this is definitely not what I signed up for. Still, it is what it is, and fortunately, the train includes a first-class section. Later in the video, I'll show you the complete chaos on board this service, but for now, let's get settled and see where this adventure takes us. Miraculously, at 10:23, with just a single minute of delay, we depart Copenhagen Central Station. Right outside the station, we have some railway views worth showing. Enjoy them with my compliments from the window of this replacement regional consist, standing in for the missing Talgo 230. And as usual upon departure, today's trip map. Shortly after departure, the crew passes through the train, handing out pre-packaged snacks and setting up a small self-service coffee station at one end of the first-class car. Of course, this is no replacement for the onboard restaurant or cafeteria that this service should normally offer if operated with one of DSB's new Talgo 230 train sets as originally planned. Now, what happened to the Talgo that should operate this service? I have no idea. However, on the day after this trip, I also had another train cancelled, this time with the Deutsche Bahn Talgo 230. So what's happening to these trains? If you know, please share it with us all in the comments below. Our first stop, less than 30 minutes after leaving Copenhagen, is Ringsted, where we arrive perfectly on time. Ringsted is one of Denmark's oldest towns, with roots dating back to the 12th century and an important railway junction. It's here that the Copenhagen Ringsted high-speed line comes to an end, and from this point onwards we continue our journey over Denmark's conventional railway network. Let me now show you what I can of the rest of the train. Please note that the train is extremely crowded and, frankly, a bit of a mess. You'll notice luggage almost everywhere because the overhead racks are far too small to accommodate the regular-sized suitcases that most passengers bring on long-distance journeys. Back at my seat, let me show you what DSB is offering in first class today. There's a table, a power socket, and a coat hook. Unfortunately, the coat hooks are positioned in such a way that passengers' jackets end up hanging directly in front of their faces. Overall, it's an adequate seat for a regional train, but a far cry from what is required for a comfortable international journey of this length. After passing Korsør, we reach one of the highlights of today's trip, the Great Belt Connection. Built during the 1990s and inaugurated to rail traffic in 1997, this immense infrastructure project finally provided a fixed rail link between the Danish islands of Zealand and Funen. Before its construction, trains had to be loaded onto ferries in order to cross the Great Belt. Today, the crossing consists of a railway tunnel beneath the eastern channel and a spectacular bridge over the western section, forming one of the most important transport links in Denmark. Thanks to the Great Belt Connection, journeys between eastern and western Denmark and onwards to Germany and the rest of Europe became dramatically faster and far more reliable. The bridges making up this connection have the required vertical and horizontal clearances to accommodate the passage of large ships below, something fundamental given that this stretch of water, the Great Belt Strait, is one of the two connections between the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. Thus, this clearance is required to keep access to the open sea to Poland, Russia, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia. Our first stop after crossing the Great Belt is Odense, which we reach with a slight delay of just 4 minutes. Odense is Denmark's third largest city and is best known as the birthplace of Hans Christian Andersen, the famous 19th century author of fairy tales such as The Little Mermaid, The Ugly Duckling and The Emperor's New Clothes. For railway enthusiasts, however, it is also home to the Danish Railway Museum, one of the most important railway museums in Scandinavia. After leaving Odense, we have around 30 minutes of pleasant Danish scenery ahead of us before reaching Tinglev, where the first train change of the day awaits. Buses will be available from there directly to Hamburg, but I managed to find a way of continuing the journey entirely by rail instead. There are several reasons for this decision, including my general dislike of long-distance bus travel. These regional push-pull trains are not certified to operate into Germany, which is why this service terminates before the border, in Padborg. DSB, however, arranged the bus replacement operation from Tinglev, a more convenient station for transferring passengers to buses than the border station of Padborg. And here we are in Tinglev. Most passengers alight here, which quickly becomes far too many people for such small station in the Danish countryside. Most head for the replacement buses, but as the final bus departs, many people are still left waiting in the parking lot, uncertain how they will continue their journeys. Meanwhile, our train departs towards Padborg almost empty. I have to say that I didn't particularly enjoy this part of the trip. DSB clearly did what it could under the circumstances, but this train is simply too small and too uncomfortable for the sort of long-distance journey it's being asked to perform. Overall, the service falls well short of what passengers can reasonably expect on a Copenhagen-Hamburg connection. And unfortunately, there is still worse to come. In the meantime, after a wait of a little over half an hour, the DSB IC3 that will take me to Flensburg, already in Germany, finally arrives. And well, it will take me and all those who have been left behind due to the lack of replacement buses. To make matters worse, one of the train's doors is out of order, leaving just a single door available for the entire train. Boarding, of course, takes forever. And finding a seat takes forever times 2. Eventually, well underway towards Padborg and the German border, I finally managed to find a seat. Let me offer you a quick seat tour. There is a folding table, complete with conveniently located rubbish bags underneath, a stylish reading light, and a coat hook. And this is my seat on the IC3. A little later, we arrive at Padborg, Denmark's last station before the German border and one of the country's most important international railway borders. Since the construction of the Great Belt connection that we saw before, all major trains between Scandinavia and Germany pass through here. Unfortunately, we are now running around 45 minutes behind the original schedule. And finally we arrive in Flensburg. This is Germany's northernmost city and, for centuries, a strategic point between Scandinavia and continental Europe, making it an historical and cultural border city. Here, exactly the same chaos ensues, with a train full of passengers trying to leave through a single operational door, while at the same time, passengers going in the opposite direction wait for their turn to board the train. Waiting for us on the adjacent track is a Deutsche Bahn Class 445, a Bombardier Twindex Vario operating Hamburg's Regional Express line RE7 to Hamburg-Altona. This is my train, although not the last before the end of this trip. So let's board and try to find a seat. At 2:17 p.m. we depart Flensburg, at last heading towards Hamburg. Well, Hamburg-Altona to be precise. My final destination for today is still Hamburg Central Station. Our first stop after Flensburg is Schleswig, which we reach around 1 hour and 10 minutes later than originally planned. Despite its modest size, Schleswig has considerable historical importance. Between 1879 and 1917, it served as the capital of the Prussian province of Schleswig-Holstein, a role that reflected its strategic position between Denmark and the Germanic world. Today, Schleswig is a pleasant regional town of around 25,000 inhabitants, known for its location on the Schlei Inlet, its historic cathedral, and the nearby Viking settlement of Haithabu. Given that this replacement journey doesn't offer any sort of cafeteria or restaurant, I had to stock up on an improvised lunch back in Copenhagen. This seems as good a time as any to enjoy it. At least I have the views. After lunch, let me offer you a brief tour of my seat. There is a table complete with an integrated bin, a power socket, and an individual reading light. For luggage, vertical stacks and overhead racks are available. Overall, this is another regional seat in another regional train, perfectly adequate for shorter journeys, but hardly the sort of accommodation one expects on an international service linking two major European cities. Less than 15 minutes after leaving Schleswig, we arrive at Rendsburg, where one of the most interesting parts of today's journey begins. The challenge here is the Kiel Canal. Opened in 1895, this 98-kilometer-long artificial waterway connects the North Sea with the Baltic Sea and is one of the busiest shipping routes in the world, averaging 32,000 ships every year. Any railway bridge crossing it must, therefore, provide sufficient clearance for large vessels navigating below. The solution was the remarkable Rendsburg High Bridge, inaugurated in 1913. The bridge carries the railway 42 meters above the canal, but reaching that height posed a problem. Trains simply could not climb quickly enough within the available distance. The engineers' answer was ingenious. They designed a large looping section of railway around the town of Rendsburg itself. This loop gradually gains height before the line reaches the bridge, allowing trains to cross the canal without excessive gradients. More than a century later, the Rendsburg Loop remains one of the most distinctive pieces of railway engineering in Germany and one of the highlights of any rail journey through Schleswig-Holstein. Afterwards, the trip continues uneventfully. Eventually, we reach the approaches to Hamburg-Altona, where the dense railway landscape of Germany's second largest city begins to unfold outside the windows. Enjoy the views, with my compliments! Finally, at 4:18 in the afternoon, we arrive in Hamburg-Altona. My journey, however, is still not over. Hamburg-Altona is one of the city's principal railway terminals and an important hub for both regional and long-distance services. However, my destination today is Hamburg Hauptbahnhof, the city's main station and one of the busiest railway stations in Europe. That means one final transfer and one final train before this Odyssey can finally come to an end. As we approach Hamburg Hauptbahnhof, more than 1 hour and 30 minutes later than my originally scheduled arrival time, let's talk about this journey. I'm honestly not sure how to describe it as anything other than a rather crazy trip. Apparently, DSB does not have sufficient reserve rolling stock capable of operating the full Copenhagen-Hamburg service when a Talgo 230 becomes unavailable. The result is a replacement operation that forces passengers into a much longer and considerably less comfortable journey than the one they booked. Passengers purchase tickets expecting a comfortable and direct international connection between Copenhagen and Hamburg, not a journey involving a regional train, followed by either a replacement bus service or, in my case, a Kangaroo adventure involving 3 different trains and an arrival more than 90 minutes late. Now, to be fair, DSB clearly tried to do the best it could under the circumstances. However, its best simply isn't good enough. This is not a journey that I particularly enjoyed, and certainly not the level of service that passengers should reasonably expect on such an important international route. I don't know whether this is a common occurrence or whether I simply traveled on a particularly unfortunate day. But if these disruptions continue to happen, DSB, perhaps in cooperation with Deutsche Bahn, should find a way to ensure that passengers are not subjected to this level of inconvenience. Because, while railway adventures can be entertaining in hindsight and make good YouTube videos, they are considerably less enjoyable when you're leaving them. And now, already in Hamburg-Altona, thanks for riding with me on today's crazy journey all the way to the end. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share and drop a comment below. It really helps the channel grow and keeps these rail adventures rolling, always with a bit of history and technology. Thanks for coming along, and I'll see you next week.